Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going? My name is Kid Lee, and welcome to my little Game of the Year show. We're gonna take a look at some categories that I've created, along with my top 5 Game of the Year. Yeah, I've been doing this for a number of years now. It's always a fun show to do. So we'll see what happens this year. Before we get too far into it, I would like to say that I do appreciate all of you for checking out my content. Whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, I could not do this without you guys, so I really, really do appreciate it. And we'll be continuing to do this into 2023 as well. There will be a few changes coming up, which I will discuss in a further video, but my number one goal for this has always been to show you guys new and upcoming games and sort of keep you updated on the news, and that's exactly what I've been doing. It's just next year we're going to do it a little bit different other than the news, because the news is kind of the news, right? But another fun little thing that's happened over the last several days on Twitch in particular is everybody's been trying to guess my Game of the Year or my top 5. Traditionally, I feel like I've been fairly transparent with those items, and people have been very successful in the past at guessing what I'm about ready to unveil, but not this year. I got you guys pretty well fooled, I think. There's one game in particular that is pretty much on everybody's list if you've played it. So that game is in my top 5, but other than that, we'll have to see what the other ones are. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first category, which is the artwork category. Now, when it comes to artwork, one thing that I don't like that a lot of the other big media groups do is they will come up with one art category, and they basically will say, all right, let's compare the hyper-realism of Call of Duty to something like Cuphead. And it's like, you can't do that. They're just way too different. So one of the things that I like to do is separate the different categories, one being a technical art side and one being an artistic art side. So the technical category would be games like Call of Duty or a game that's going for more of a hyper-realism, or the artistic category are reserved for games that are, well, more on the artistic side. So we're going to go ahead and start out with the artistic art category or design category. And this year, and in general in particular, I always like to look for a game that is maybe doing something a little bit different on the artsy side. You know, Cuphead was another great example of there's never been a game like Cuphead where they just like completely hand drew it and hand animated it, and that game just turned out like absolutely amazing, right? But yeah, for this year, my award for Best Graphics Artistic is going to go to a little game known as Dusk Falls. So this is a game that was kind of supported by Microsoft to at least a certain degree. And there's actually some really cool videos on YouTube where you can go and see how they actually made this. They actually filmed it in live action and then took the scenes and essentially hand drew all of the scenes, and in doing so made sort of a stop motion artistic type of video game. And as you can see here on the screen, you have dialogue options. And so as you're going through the game, it's one of those where you're making choices, and then the choices, affect the ending of the game and stuff like that. And after each chapter, you get to see like this big long tree thing that happens, and it'll say like, you went this way, but you could have gone this way or this way or this way. And overall, it's just a very, very cool game. One of the more unique games that came out this year. It's also a very cool game to actually play on like couch co-op. There's actually a full companion app for this game on your phone, or maybe even like tablets, where you can sit down with your friends and family and make choices and see who lives and see who dies. But yeah, As Dusk Falls is a very artistic game that is getting a lot of praise this year. So very, very cool. I'm glad that I played it. Next up, as we jump over to the technical art category, as I mentioned, this is a category that generally is reserved for games that are going for more of a realism. And from all the games that I've played this year, there were two that kind of stood out. But in the end, it was indeed Elden Ring that took that award for me. And the other one that maybe could have taken it was actually Plague's Tale Requiem. The games were very, very close. Both games had an amazing world. But what set Elden Ring a little bit apart was two things for me. One, the cloth animations and armor detail on the character is probably one of the best that I've seen in a video game. And then part two is actually the castles and structures and the interiors, which I'm showing a little bit on the screen right now. It's like when you're inside of a castle, there's just like so much detail in the fixtures and the walls, and you go out into the open world. And right now I'm showing a scene where the tree is burning, and so there's ashes everywhere, and you walk out into these areas, and there's like these big unveils of, again, more castles and forts and structures and all this stuff. But just an absolutely beautiful game from a technical art standpoint. Just, yeah, Elden Ring is quite the game, and is winning a lot of awards this year. But yeah, very, very cool. Whoops, I clicked the button twice. All right, next up, we are going to move on to Best Music Soundtrack. This is always a fun category. And this year in particular, there were a lot of games that had absolutely fantastic soundtracks. One shout out that I will actually give in this category, there was a game called Metal Hellsinger, which is actually a rhythm-based shooter that is completely based on the music of the game. And if you actually go and look at the artist list for that game, they pulled in some big names to do the music for that game. And so it was just games like that, like, really stole the show this year. But for me, there was one game that kind of stuck out a little bit when it came to the music. And when I was playing this, and when I was streaming it in particular, I made the comment several times like, man, they're hitting the music at the right time. It's not like blasting in my ear. A lot of times it's just like slow and subtle. And then when you're in a big fight, it picks up, and it's just, they did absolutely everything perfectly with the soundtrack of this game. So put on your earphones, sit back. And my winner for this category is going to be this game. Plague Tale Requiem. Listen to this just for a little bit. It's also cool that games put out videos like this. I'm always a big fan of behind-the-scenes stuff, especially sound design. I believe this is the main theme. But yeah, as I said, as I was playing through Plague's Tale Requiem, just they absolutely nailed the music cues. And there'd be so many times where you would hear music like this, just lightly in the background as you were running around, and it was great. Just light vocals. Boom. All right, cool. Kill it. Kill the music. All right, cool. Oh, wait, it didn't stop. YouTube just buffered. All right. See, actually, right there, I just learned something. I had another glitch happen. But yep, there you go. That's my best music soundtrack winner, Plague's Tale Requiem. All right. Next on the list is the favorite character category. And really, there was only one character that really stood out for me this year. There's a lot of great characters. Again, you could even go back to Plague's Tale, Amicia and Hugo as great characters. Some very interesting characters in Elden Ring, or even going back to, As Dusk Falls with Vince and his family. But yeah, there was, like I said, there's one character in particular that really stood out for me. And let's take a look at this.
Valentine, you just drawn your own face over the character sheet?
It said draw your hero, and I'm my own hero.
Okay. And Fred, it says your starter sword does murder 1,000 damage?
My bad, I left off 0.
Okay, no plan! Fred and Valentine can't be trusted with pencils, let alone dice. So it's up to you, Newbie. You are the fate maker. And these fools shall be thine advisors, I guess.
Fine. I advise that you better be a badass. We're here to slay evil and get gold.
I know you see me as a role model. Follow my lead and you'll be a great fate maker.
Alright, one last thing. Bunkers and Badasses is a role-playing game, baby. That means you do not break character voice. Escape! Break me up and do that.
I am destined for greatness and glory. This quest is merely the start of my legend.
Tasty! Now, prepare to enter a world of fantasy!
I don't see anything.
You gotta imagine it, knucklehead.
Just close your eyes and wonder. You have arrived in the Snoring Valley, an unassuming and peaceful corner of the Queendom that harbors a dark secret. Dun, dun, dun. You journeyed far to be here, heeding the call of the Queen herself.
The Queen herself! What could she want of us?
She fears the Dragon Lord will soon reawaken. You must find his tomb and prevent his resurrection.
What I'm hearing is, we get to whoop his ass.
Here's a little cheat sheet to track your health and map and stuff up.
Okay. So, Tiny Tina from Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is my character of the year. This is a character, for those who don't know, that started out as a side character in Borderlands 2, and now she has her own game. voiced by Ashley Birch. Just does an absolutely incredible job with that character, a character that's just completely like bonkers. Also, by the way, chat, did the echo go away? I think I immediately saw what the problem with that was, but just double checking. Yeah. So actually, if I do this,
And get gold.
the echo comes back, right?
Follow my
But anyway, another glitch. Interesting. But yeah, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands was a absolutely fantastic game. I enjoyed that game quite a bit. So yeah, props to Tiny Tina and her madness. All right, next up on the list is the best game that you didn't play. This is an extremely easy one for me. It's like there's zero competition in this category. Well, maybe a little bit of competition. But it's the other game that won an absolutely ton of awards. And I'm sure you guys know what that game is, and that is going to be, as we switch over to main, God of War Ragnarok. So there's a lot of other great games. I would say number 2 on the list would probably be Horizon Forbidden West, but yeah, these God of War games are just absolutely phenomenal. But I never got a chance to beat the first one, and so I didn't want to jump into this one until I had a chance to actually do so. So that's why I didn't get to play it. But yeah, this was another year that, you know, it's hard to play everything that comes out. It really, really is. But one of these days or one of these years, I'm going to get around to playing these 2 games and just be absolutely amazed by everything that Sony Santa Monica is doing. You know, very, very, very good stuff. I'd be curious to know, either in chat or the YouTube comments, what is your one game that you didn't get a chance to play that you wish you did? So yeah, leave a comment. We'll see what you guys got. See, I gotta fix that little glitch there. It's not supposed to be doing that. All right, moving on. We got one more category, and that is the most anticipated game for 2023. And man, where do you even start with this particular list? It's absolutely insane. Like just to name a few, we've got Hogwarts Legacy, we've got Blood Bowl 3, we've got Wild Hearts, Skull and Bones, Jedi Survivor, Storyteller, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. We've got the new Final Fantasy, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Redfall, Starfield, Star Trek Resurgence, Blue Protocol. We've got Lies of P, Replaced. We've got Planet of Lana, Hellblade 2, Sins of a Solar Empire 2, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, Hades 2, which I don't think is actually coming out next year, but who knows. We got Banishers. We got Armored Core 6. But to answer the question, I think there's one game in particular that I'm really, really looking forward to. And that is going to be this game. Let's take a look.
Diablo 4 is the next generation of action RPG, melding monster slaying and loot collecting with a fully realized open world.
It's not for the faint of heart. It's gory and unnerving. It's creepy.
Diablo 4 is all about player choice.
It takes all of the pillars of a Diablo game and just expands them with all of the new features that people really love and appreciate in modern games. Whoever you see yourself being, you can create in Diablo 4.
It's important to include robust character customization because then I can play the fantasy that I want to play. It allows you to switch around your playstyle as well.
Everything feels very powerful and fun.
One of the really cool things about having an open world is your journey that you take throughout Diablo 4 is your own. There's no linear path that you have to follow.
We've got almost 150 dungeons in the game.
150 dungeons.
There's all kinds of surprises as you're exploring.
Strongholds are an enemy territory that you need to reclaim.
You might have a space that begins as a hostile area, but after you've cleared it out,
the evil in this place has been cleansed.
It now becomes a friendly town.
Sometimes it's a new town, sometimes it's a new dungeon. There's a whole bunch of rewards that you get, and you have a real impact on the world as a result.
No, you can't leave us here. They might come back any moment.
Local events are really cool little story segments that happen within the open world.
You'll just be running through the world, and then a local event will pop up, and you can choose to participate in it or get a group together and just wail on these like giant world bosses.
This is very much going to be a Diablo MMO.
These are events that take a lot of people, and you really have to work together.
Being able to see all the players on your screen, collaborating, trying to take this big monster down, it's epic.
It's so easy to create a community. It makes Diablo more of a social experience.
We've got fully enabled crossplay.
If you have an Xbox and your buddy has a PC, you're going to be able to group up.
Or you can play couch co-op. 2 people on a couch can sit there and have a great experience.
We've created specific zones where players can engage in PvP.
If you go there, you can start swinging away at people. But you're also opening yourself up to being swung at.
If you're like really, really good, the game
I think I'm
actually
probably
marks
going to
you as, like,
play
a
as
champion on the
Rogue
map.
for my first playthrough. Or Thief, whichever it's called.
You basically become a loot pinata, and everyone wants to chase you down.
The last story mission is really the beginning of a whole different part of the journey.
Now you're set up for the end game, and that end game is rich with things to do that allow you to get more and more powerful.
Whether it's new items or new dungeons or new Paragon boards, every single time you come back to play Diablo 4, there's going to be new stuff for you to experience.
And it's something that we're going to support for years to come.
I'm really excited for folks to get their hands on Diablo 4.
Just to see millions of people really enjoying the different options.
Through the campaign,
local events,
couch co-op,
endgame,
PvP, it almost doesn't end.
And we are so close.
See, Lilith, we defeat her in the Marvel universe, and she comes over to the Diablo universe. That's what happens. It's crazy. But yeah, Diablo, I've always been a big fan of that series, and so hopefully it's really good. It's going to have microtransactions, but that's just the way that Blizzard operates these days, so pretty cool stuff. But yeah, next year has the potential to be like one of the best years in gaming that we've seen in a long time. I feel like we kind of say that every year, but for the last 3 years in particular, things just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. But I think next year everything's finally coming out, so pretty cool stuff. So that's going to go ahead and do it for all of the categories. So now it is time to jump into the top 5 of the year. So let's go ahead and start with number 5, ladies and gentlemen. So number 5 is from I guess I'm going to call it a franchise that I grew up playing. But they haven't really come out with one of these games in a very, very long time. And finally, this year, a studio came along and said, you know what, we want to take a shot at doing this. And I think a lot of people were very concerned that they couldn't pull it off, but they did. So my number 5 for the year, ladies and gentlemen, is indeed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. This is only one of a couple of games that I actually played through twice this year. But as I mentioned, back in the day on anything from the NES to the SNES to the N64, the Sega, they always had these 2D turtle games. And they were all like very, very good. But yeah, we haven't seen one in such a long time. And so it was going to be like, could somebody actually make one of these games, make it be good, make it look and feel like those old games did? And the answer is yes, they completely nailed it. Obviously, this game is using, the newer game engines and newer technology, but they were able to create a pixel art style that looks absolutely fantastic. The combat is good. The multiplayer options are good. And in my opinion, I'm never really a big fan of playing a game like this solo. It's better as a co-op experience, which I'm happy I was able to actually do with Shredder's Revenge. There actually is a queuing system in the game as well, so you can actually just, as you're playing, just play it essentially online, and then somebody can pop into your game and help you out, or you can do the same to them. But yeah, absolutely fantastic little Turtles side-scrolling beat-em-up. It's also a very short game. It's only like 2-3 hours. It's probably on sale right now if anybody wanted to try and pick it up. But yeah, absolutely fantastic experience. They nailed everything they were trying to do with it. The soundtrack is also very, very impressive. So yeah, there you go. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge. Yeah, very, very cool little game. So when I was making up my top 5 this year, I pretty much had Shredder's Revenge locked in at that number 5 spot for a long time. And I'm pretty sure that I knew what my number 2 was. And eventually I locked in what my game of the year was. But like spots 3 and 4, I didn't 100% sure what they were going to be. Spot 4 in particular. So this game I added literally yesterday is when I locked in slot number 4. Like I took a look at all the like 30-some games that I played this year, and I'm like, man, what deserves to be on the list? Because there's so many games that could have been on this list. And as I've mentioned before, this was a weird year for me because I didn't have one game that completely just grabbed me and I was like, oh man, this is my game of the year. Like that didn't happen to me this year. And so I had to really look and be like, all right, what games did I really enjoy? What games did I play the most? And this game, as I said, just made the list as of like yesterday. And honestly, the more that I think about it, the more I feel like it does deserve a spot, because the previous game was also fantastic. And I'm pretty sure I didn't give it like any awards. And in the gaming community as a whole, it's known as a game that's great, but also didn't win like any awards. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in, and it's 2 Point Campus. When it comes to these, almost these city builder management sim style games, 2 Point Campus is one of the best ones out there. It really is. These are the developers that almost made the genre back in the 90s. And for those who don't know the story, the 2 Point games, 2 Point Hospital, 2 Point Campus, were made by ex-Bullfrog devs who created games like Theme Hospital back in the day. So you could say that these are the guys that almost started the genre to a certain degree. But now they're back, and a couple years ago they made the new studio, and they're back making games again after 20 years or whatever it is. And For 2 Point Campus, they took a look at 2 Point Hospital. They said, how can we make it better? And they did. They essentially kept or improved on every single category within the game itself. You know, the art style is great. The music is great. You can see that British humor in there a little bit because they constantly have like a radio DJs that are talking and a PA announcer, and they're just constantly trying to be funny, but it's that kind of funny where you're just like, oh God, yeah, it's funny, but I'm not gonna laugh at it, you know, that sort of thing. But these sim elements are fantastic, and then what you're able to do with the actual like building aspects and all that, and it's hands down one of the best management style games out there. So if you like management style games, I highly recommend it. It's very, very good, and it's a game that I'm gonna probably keep playing. The next one that I want to do is I want to do like a futuristic tech build. So I think that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, there you go. 2 Point Campus, absolutely fantastic. All right, we're down to the top 3. Does anybody in chat want to try and guess the top 3 at this point? I'll give you guys a second. You know one game that's in there, but where does that one game slot compared to what the heck are the other 2? Anybody have any thoughts? I will say that when I get done, I will do some shout outs, because I did wrestle with the idea of doing a top 10 because there were some very, very good games that I played that didn't make the top 5, and I wish they could have. So as chat is thinking, I will give you my number 3. Okay. Somebody in chat just said Age of Empires. That didn't come out this year. All right, so my number 3 is from a very well-known studio. I have not played a lot of their games, and honestly, I don't even know why. Their games are considered to be quite difficult, and I would say that the number 3 game is the most accessible of all of their games. And yeah, let's just go ahead and throw it out. So my number 3 is Elden Ring. All right, so here's the thing. I do believe that there are 2 things that Elden Ring has done that is better than any game in the history of video games. Okay? Number 1 is Elden Ring is the best open world exploration game ever made. Now, when it comes to open world games, there's multiple categories within that. And so I'm being very specific. Open world exploration. And as you may or may not know, the From Software games in particular are very community-oriented games. But Elden Ring in particular puts you into this world, and they're like, all right, players, go find all the stuff. And it literally takes the entire internet to piece the stuff together, which is part of the fun of these games. So if you're somebody who's not played Elden Ring yet, and you're going to, I recommend like looking up as little as possible, because just running around in that beautiful world, being like, hey, I see a shrine like a mile away. I'm going to go over there and see what that is. Or you're like looking off a cliff and you're like, it looks like there's a cave down there. Let's go check it out. Like, all of that is possible in Elden Ring. There are secrets hidden around every single corner. And that is 100% one of the most fun things about that game. I've even mentioned myself that Elden Ring should have a subtitle, and the game should be called Elden Ring. Oh, look, there's a shiny. Or Elden Ring. Hey, let's go that way. Or Elden Ring. Time to get distracted. Because it's one of those games where you will set a goal. Be like, all right, today I'm going to go into that castle. I'm going to kill that boss. But between point A and point B, you find 500 other things to do. And you're like, 6 hours later, you still haven't gone into that castle and killed that boss. And it's just, it's one of those games. It's absolutely fantastic. So here's the second thing that Elden Ring has done better than any other video game in history. Elden Ring allows you to create literally any kind of character that you want within that universe. Or another way of saying it would be creating any kind of character that you want within a medieval fantasy type of universe. So you can literally go into Elden Ring and you can say, I want to be Gandalf. You can do it. You can say, I want to be like literally any character from Lord of the Rings. You can do it. You can say, all right, let's get silly. I want to shoot fireballs with this hand, and I want to have an axe in this hand. You can do it. You can say, I want to beat the entire game in my underwear with a club. You can do it. You see where I'm going with this? You can say, I want to be just the ultimate spellcaster, the ultimate ranger, the ultimate rogue, the ultimate paladin. I want to dual wield pikes, spears, axes, whatever. You can do it in this game. Now, is Elden Ring the perfect game? Absolutely not. Since I'm not a From Software fanboy, even though I don't know if I like that word or not, I can pick this game apart and tell you all kind of bad things or things that this game does wrong. And there's a bunch. Like at the Game Awards, this game was up for Best Narrative. That might be one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard. This game does not have a narrative. So how can it be up for Best Narrative? It's a game that they hired George R.R. Martin for to like write the story and mythos and all this. And then the game just doesn't present it well. Like the entire story and all the characters have full VO, but it's possible that you could just skip by a character or a story piece and not even know it. So yeah, the game just has a lot of very weird decisions. But overall, it's fantastic. It deserves every award that it's getting. You know, it won Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and you know, I've got it in my third spot because it is that good. But going back to what I was saying about difficulty, it is by far the easiest of the From Software games, and that's because you can kind of treat this like an MMO, well, unless you're modding a single-player MMO. So you can literally run into a boss encounter, and you can say, oh, that's too hard for me. You can literally leave, go level somewhere else, come back, and beat him when you're stronger. The game is 100% designed around doing encounters when you want to do them, not when you're necessarily forced to do them. So you can over-level an encounter if you choose to do so. And again, it's a game all about choices. And it's one of the best games out there when it comes to those choices. But yeah. Elden Ring, absolutely fantastic. I'm actually in the middle of a second playthrough of it. I can see myself playing this game for years. Just trying different builds, going through the game. My first playthrough took me 150 hours, and I didn't even come close to doing everything. I did complete the main story, but there was side stories and all kinds of loot and dungeons I never found because they're hidden. You got to go find them. But yeah, absolutely fantastic game. If they did an Elden Ring 2 or whatever, I'd be there day one. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. All right, chat. We are on to my number 2. So this game I knew was not my game of the year. And I pretty much had this game locked in at my number 2 for a long, long time. And funny enough, if you go back to previous years, I almost feel like the artsy game always ends up as my number 2. And it is As Dusk Falls. So we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the artwork. But when it comes to unique games this year, there's no game that's more unique than As Dusk Falls. I'm somebody who, especially here in recent years, whenever there's a game that comes out that's like very unique and different, I definitely gravitate towards those games. And then if they're good, they generally end up in my top 5. But I had some people asking me like, oh, we love As Dusk Falls. Is there another game out there that's like identical to it? And my answer is no, there isn't. You have something like Detroit Become Human, which is kind of similar when it comes to the, voting for decisions and stuff like that. But Detroit has a lot more actual like walking around and gameplay and that sort of stuff, where this game is just a straight up, you're just essentially following the narrative. And from there, you're making the choices and you're creating your own story, so to speak. But yeah, just a very cool experience. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of only like 2 or 3 games that I played through twice. Had an awesome experience both times. I'd love to do it again just to see if we could get like a 3rd or 4th different ending. And playing it with a group of people is really, really fun. It's kind of hard to do in one sitting. I want to say the game was like 6 hours. So you might have to break it up into like a 3-hour deal if you're playing it with your friends or family or something like that. But yeah, very cool, very unique game. There aren't very many games out there that are like it. And again, as I mentioned before, check out the behind the scenes YouTube videos on it. It's very, very interesting. Very, very cool. All right. We are on to the final game. What is my game of the year? I think I got you guys confused still. You guys have no idea what this is, right? Because there's some big games that I've played that haven't come up yet. Which one could it be? Or maybe it's a game we've already talked about. Who knows? Who knows? All right. So, my game of the year is from a studio that has made multiple games. And I want to say I've played every game except for one. I would say, generally speaking, in the gaming industry, these games are not talked about very much. Like, I haven't really looked at like everybody's game of the year list, even like IGN and stuff like that. But I don't think this game has been nominated anywhere that I've seen. It wasn't at the Game Awards at all. Which is kind of crazy because it is a really good game. But I think it's one of these games that whenever they release one, it gets swept under the rug. Even though they're super good and they're very high quality. So yeah, it's a little bit puzzling to me. I want to say in previous years, I'm trying to think if any of these games have ever shown up like in my top 5s or anything before. And off the top of my head, I want to say no. But this is a game series that every time they come out with one, it gets better. Visually, it gets better. The gameplay gets better. The stories are, some people like them, some people don't. It just depends. on what you're feeling on that on that day. But yeah, my game of the year is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I'm a big fan of D&D, and I'm a big fan of Borderlands. I like the Borderlands humor. As I mentioned, every game that comes out gets better. I love the Borderlands games. Borderlands 3 was great. And with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, they mixed in the D&D elements. And I loved every minute of that game when I played it. It's another game that I could see myself doing multiple playthroughs of. The loot is a lot of fun. And of course, we were talking about Tiny Tina and the humor earlier. You know, you kind of compare the humor of something like this game versus something like 2 Point Campus. And it's two very different styles of humor. Or even here recently, we played High on Life, which again is another style of humor, which is more towards like the younger side, I would say. But generally speaking, there aren't that many humor-based games that come out every year. And this year, we just happened to get like 3, 4, 5 humor-based games. And I played 3 of them. But no, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, the game nailed everything it was trying to do. There was little to no bugs or issues. It ran well compared to a lot of other games that came out this year. And yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I loved it. So that's it. That's my game of the year. So a couple. So let's do some shout outs, right? As I mentioned, there were so many games that came out that could have made the top 5. Maybe even could have been my game of the year. As I mentioned, this was a hard year. It really was. So Darth Alru mentioned WWE 2K22. So here's what I want to say about that game. I'm somebody who grew up on the wrestling games, and there hasn't been a good wrestling game in a long time. Finally, they got their stuff together, and WWE 2K22 is like the best wrestling game to come out in a long time. That being said, that game has a lot of problems, and the devs don't know how to patch their own game. Like, literally every time they patch the game, you have to re-download the entire game. And I would never award anything like that. So, like, next year, if they come out with a new one and it's even better, then we could be looking at award territory maybe. But I put over 100 hours in that game, and it was great. We had a lot of fun with it here on stream, but I can't award it anything. Several of you mentioned Vampire Survivors. So here's the thing. Vampire Survivors could have been my game of the year. It could have been in the top 5. But here's my problem. I didn't play it enough. Like, if I would have put another 20, 30 hours into it, then I think it could have qualified for me to be on the list. But I didn't. Like, what does my Steam say here real quick? How many hours did I put into that game? Let's see. I put like 9 hours. And yeah, 9 hours just isn't enough. Just not enough. Another one that I think people have mentioned is Cult of the Lamb. Cult of the Lamb, absolutely fantastic game. I'd recommend it to anybody. But I couldn't get it into the top 5. It's like, what would I swap out? And I couldn't. But I thoroughly enjoyed that game. Again, that was a great game to stream. If I would have done a top 10, Cult of the Lamb probably would have been like 6th. Or I would have maybe flipped around Turtles in Cult of the Lamb and made Cult of the Lamb in 5th. So very, very close to making the top 5. Let's see. What else was there? Let me here real quick. Let me grab my list of games. Just to make sure I give all the shout outs that I need to give out. Because no, there was a lot of great games that came out this year. Oh yeah, Plague's Tale did not make the top 5. So the reason that Plague's Tale didn't make the top 5, and it would actually be the same reason why the original didn't make a top 5, and that is like I enjoyed it, but those corridor linear games sometimes can have really bad gameplay sections. And I don't know, there were just some like little pieces here and there of that game that I didn't enjoy, and so it didn't make the top 5. But those are 2 games that I highly recommend. The first one's probably really cheap. I think the second one's on Game Pass. Maybe they're both on Game Pass. But yeah, those games are very, very good. Yeah, like I said, visually it almost beat Elden Ring for the art category. It did win the music category. It could have almost won the character category. So it's like, man, it's so close. So close. All right. Here, looking at the rest of my list here super fast. What else can I recommend? I did play a little bit of Grounded, but Grounded was another game that just didn't really grab me. I know Grounded is up for a bunch of other awards. I think if you're a survivor, or not survivor, but survival type player, you'd really enjoy that. Also very, very good in multiplayer. You know what? Overwatch 2 came out. Overwatch 2 is Overwatch 1 except for better. That could have easily won the art category. It could have been in my top 5, but I decided just to not do that. But Overwatch 2, if you're into those kinds of games, absolutely fantastic. Actually, another game that I think surprised some of you that did not make my top 5 was Marvel Snap. I really enjoy card games. Marvel Snap actually got voted as the best mobile game of the year. And Marvel Snap is a free-to-play card game. The monetization is incredibly good, and it's a fantastic card game. That could have easily made my my top 5. Two more that I want to talk about. Actually, I'm surprised that nobody has mentioned the second one. The first one I'll mention is a little game called Settlement Survival. Fantastic little city builder. There's a city builder out there that's called Banished, which most people consider to be like one of the best city builders out there. Settlement Survival is better than Banished. It is basically Banished 2.0. I also feel like that's a game that I didn't get a chance to play enough of, which is why it maybe didn't make a list. But if you're into city builders, take a look at Settlement Survival. Very, very good. And finally, this is the game that I'm surprised that none of you mentioned. Marvel's Midnight Suns did not win anything. So here's the deal. For those who don't know, I'm a big fan of Firaxis. I'm a big fan of Marvel. I'm a big fan of XCOM. I have said that this game had the potential to be a dream game for me, which it kind of is. My problem with Midnight Suns is the first 4 hours of that game is it's not the best. Like I had a real problem with the first 4 hours of that game. After the game opens up and you can do whatever you want, it gets really good. Some of the stories, some of the writing, some of the dialogue, absolutely fantastic. Like if you're a hardcore Marvel fan, You play this game and it's just feeding you lore, and you would just love it. But the first 4 hours being not the best, and then every once in a while you'll run into these gameplay segments where like the writing and dialogue is actually not very good. And I chalk that up to, like, this is the biggest game that Firaxis has ever done. It has like the most writing, the most VO, the most dialogue, the most story. And I think they tripped over their own feet a little bit when making it, because there will be times that you'll get dialogue from a character that doesn't make any sense. There will be an event happened, and you'll get characters that still talk about things that happened before the event, and it mixes things up, and it's a mess sometimes. But no, there's elements of Midnight Suns that are amazing, and then there's elements that drag it down. The combat is incredible. Like the combat, like Firaxis knows how to do turn-based combat. You know, again, you look at anything from Civ to XCOM to whatever. They're like the kings of turn-based combat. But it's kind of like the rest of the game kind of drags it down a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I'm super enjoying it. I'm going to finish the game. I will probably do multiple playthroughs of it. But there's just elements of it that drag the game down. And so I couldn't put it in my top 5. I just couldn't. There was literally a stream that I did several nights ago. And there was a moment that was like a 10 out of 10 moment. And at that moment, I was like, maybe I do put this in my top 5. And then literally after the super awesome moment, there was a moment that was just dialogue-wise just terrible. And I'm like, oh, out of the top 5 it goes. That literally happened. And I'm just like, oh, man. It's crazy. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is my my Game of the Year show for 2022. Once again, I really do appreciate everybody coming out, checking out the streams, YouTube videos, VODs, however you consume the content. I really, really do appreciate it. If you're on Twitter, make sure you follow me on Twitter. If you're a Discord person, make sure you jump into the community Discord. And yeah, we have a lot more happening in 2023, so it should be a lot of fun. So for those who are watching on YouTube in particular, that'll go ahead and do it for the video. So thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.